Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Web3 Talks series. My name is Ornella Hernandez and today I am here with Rahim Mahtab, who is a major NFT collector and angel investor. How are you, Rahim?
I'm very good, Ornella. Thank you for having me. Super excited for our conversation today.
Yes, me too. So I wanted to start off with pointing out the fact that you are a mega NFT collector. You've invested in over 300 projects, so you probably have over thousands of NFTs. So why? Why NFTs?
Well, I've always believed a lot in art and culture. There was a point in my life where I wanted to be a musician. I've been a photographer, filmmaker, and motion graphics designer. So I feel like I've always been on taps with what culture means, and I see NFTs as collecting culture and having ownership in culture. So I think that really piques my interest, all the way from IP to art to collectibles, and I think I see that as the future of our internet.
All right, I love that. So let's take it back a little bit to your background. You are born and raised in Dubai, and you said you were in the music world for a bit. You've worked in many different industries. So what was it that led you to Web3? Is there a moment maybe you can recall where you found out about whether it was Bitcoin or about NFTs and you were like, I think I need to be in this space?
Amazing. So I've been in the content creation world for a couple of years, and I think people don't realize of how crazy the world is in some ways, where the amount of distribution of revenue that is between a platform and the creators behind it, or how if you are a content creator on the internet, that the platforms and the companies behind it are billion-dollar companies on the backs of artists, but except a few other platforms, there are a good number of platforms that actually don't pay you $1 out of it. Anything that artists and collectors are making, or creators for that matter, are actually making it through sponsorships. So the platform is not helping you in any way. And I felt I always thought that was a broken model. In a lot of capacity. I think a lot of our understanding of what copyright and rules and regulation are just didn't make sense to me. I used to be a fashion and lifestyle photographer. In some degrees, it never made sense to me that if I take a picture of a model, why do I own the copyright of the picture when there's a model in the picture? Why have we created these rules that kind of are very vintage in some capacity? So they never made sense to me. And I feel like this NFT tech is kind of more on the decentralized ethos, which is also the ethos of society and community. And I think decisions like this, or what we see as morally acceptable or not, or right or wrong, should be something that comes from community and society, rather than a bunch of people sitting in suits and ties and controlling the ecosystem.
Yes, definitely. So since you are a part of many different NFT communities, could you maybe describe a couple of them, and then maybe what that means to you, what it looks like? What does an NFT community look like?
Amazing. So I will probably categorize this in certain different verticals.
Okay.
So you have your collectible side of NFTs, which is where you have projects like Bored Ape Yacht Club and Pudgy Penguins.
Yeah.
These are your IP-based projects where you're almost buying into maybe a digital identity, if you want to use these avatars as digital identity. So think of it, when I say an IP company, so think of it like you're buying characters from the Disney universe, or the Marvel universe, where you actually own Spider-Man, or you own Mickey Mouse and things like that. And one of the ways to understand that why is this different from the traditional IP world is, let's say a small example, that let's say there's a cola brand that wants to get Spider-Man for the campaign. Like a soda, you mean? Like a soda.
Yeah, okay.
They want to get rights to Spider-Man for that campaign. Now, very likely what would happen is you would end up paying millions of dollars to get those rights. Let's say you actually get them from Marvel to actually have that character on your soda can, and you do the marketing and advertising, and let's say the product fails. What essentially has happened is you've lost all that marketing money that you've put into getting the commercial rights, which happens all the time in the advertising world, right? Not every product is successful. Now, let's say when you're buying collectible IPs, you're not buying rights to them, you're actually owning those characters. So imagine owning Spider-Man and owning Batman and things like that. So when you are, for example, using a Bored Ape, which is like one of the biggest NFT projects in this space, or Pudgy Penguin, and let's say you do a whole brand around it, whether it's a soda can, whether it's like a chocolate company or whatever, and let's say again that company fails. The reason this is a bit different is you didn't buy the commercial rights to that asset. You actually own that asset. And the whole IP world is such a crazy world. Mickey Mouse is a very good example of it. So Mickey Mouse is a $15 billion IP character. And just to give you an idea of how crazy this world is, Disney has so much power for 3 years, for 3 periods in a row, which is, I believe, in the 1980s and early 2000s, they were able to change the copyright law to make sure that Mickey Mouse remains with Disney.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And this has happened because, like, in 1924, when Mickey Mouse was created, the act kept the particular asset for about, I believe, 50 years. But every time before the period would end, they would end up extending the creative
license.
Creative license around it. January 1st, 2024, Mickey Mouse is supposed to go again in public domain. And this is actually I actually found this out yesterday. This is actually one of the first times. Do you want to get it? You want to buy it? This is actually one of the first times in human history they're actually not fighting it. They're actually perhaps letting it go in public domain. So the whole IP world is a very interesting side of NFTs. Then you have the art side. So this is what I think we've solved, a very fundamental problem that has existed in the art world, whether it came to digital art, whether it came to photography, that we ended up doing watermarks, which was a concept we took from the traditional world. So in the traditional world, we would either do signs or we would put fingerprints. But the thing, and I say this as a photographer myself, the watermark ecosystem never made sense because they're so easily like you can remove them or add them. So how do you like really prove ownership of something? And I think that's where a fundamental place, I believe, NFTs solve the biggest problem, because now you have a decentralized network where you can prove you've created something on a particular artwork. And why I think this is a lot more valuable than people realize, Flickr is a very great example. So Flickr was like a photography platform.
Yeah, I used to use it actually.
So Flickr is a very great example where a lot of people used to upload their photographs like back in the days. There were a couple of companies that bought it in the middle, and then Yahoo ended up buying it. And when they ended up acquiring it, because it was unlimited storage for the longest period of time, they just came out with like an email saying, if you don't pay X amount of money, after a week, you're gonna lose beyond this storage. So many people actually lost having their photographs on the internet for eternity. So there were a whole group of people that never actually saved those photographs somewhere. B, that imagine if Ornella posted something there 15 years ago. And I took that photograph and now I posted it on the internet 5 years ago somewhere else. Now there is no way to prove on the internet
that it was mine,
that it was yours, because now you're going to post it again, but it's going to seem on the internet that I posted it 5 years ago. So, and I think that's like a very good example of how do we solve this problem.
The authenticity problem, the provenance problem.
Exactly. How do we keep something on the internet without being relied on a particular platform, whether it's Instagram or Snapchat or YouTube, that if any of these platforms go robust, should your provenance, your hard work, and the brand that you build online, should that just disappear? I don't think so. And that's where the art world comes a lot into place, where you have provenance and history on the blockchain, and you can prove this artwork was created at a particular instance in time. And then you have like the third side of NFTs, which is something that's going to be the focus in 2024 and 2025, which is the gaming side of things. And a very simple statement to understand is something we've never seen in the regular gaming world is passive gaming. And the easiest way to understand that is people who own the horses don't race those horses. This is actually a very beautiful quote that was said by the CEO of Animoca, who's one of the biggest tech giants behind all of the gaming projects. And he talks about that if I own the asset, I own that gaming asset, I can actually rent it out to you, and you can play and you can earn something on it.
So these are in-game assets, correct? It could be skins or weapons or something used in the game.
So I feel like that's one aspect that's going to be a big thing in the future. And I think the biggest vertical that's going to come is also tokenizing culture. So this could be your watches, your cars, your fashion bags.
Like real world assets tokenization?
Yes.
Okay.
And the particular reason I like to focus on tokenizing culture that rather than using real world assets as a tech, as a terminology, is because people instantly think it's gold or real estate.
Real estate, yeah.
But I want people to realize that we are also looking to tokenize watches.
Okay,
or
so
like
any physical objects.
Wine or things like that.
Okay.
Because these things have communities behind it.
Yeah.
Real estate doesn't have a community. There's no, like people are not like
well,
connected.
the realtors, I guess.
Yeah, but there's not an emotional connection behind it, right?
Okay.
But then when you have like a particular Rolex or like a 7 Friday, you have like an emotional connection. That's why people are buying like a watch from the 70s for like 6 figures and things like that, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like the more we're living in the digital world, people would want to show the world what they own in the digital world a lot more than the physical world. And I think as we grow into the future is going to become a main thing. So I think those are some places.
Yeah, let's hone into that idea of maybe showing off our digital possessions or digital identities. PFP or profile pictures became a major status symbol, I think, within the community. So the fact that you had a Bored Ape and you put that as your X, formerly Twitter, profile pic, like that was huge. You're like, yes, I belong to this community. So that there was a sense of status and belonging. So that's one side of things. Then there was, like you said, the artistic side of things. People who genuinely loved art and digital art and just wanted a new medium to express themselves. So when it comes to our digital identities, though, do we think that it might ever become even more important than our physical identities? Like if we put so much emphasis on how we look like online or how we look like in games, for example, like do you think that'll ever be we'll prioritize that more?
In my personal view, I actually think so, yes. Especially with everything that we are building with the metaverse, right? We had like a different understanding of what metaverse was in 2021. And now you look at some of the things that even like Meta is working on, you realize of how fast we've gotten or how much progress we've done in a couple of years.
Yeah.
What I believe that people don't realize what the metaverse means is not you and I having a conversation and an interview. It means that if you and I were we shared a hug, that we both were able to feel that hug in the metaverse.
Okay.
And what does that even mean? Like, how do we even transcend to a point where we are able to not distinguish between what is physical and what is digital? And that's what the world is building towards. And I wholeheartedly believe that the world is going to become more and more digital. And I think when that happens, then, just like how we have a lot of like tribes and communities that have existence throughout human evolution, that there is something that will come out of natively from this space. Will it be these digital identities? Maybe not. But I wholeheartedly believe that because there are these communities forming, you already see some level of that you feel like a sense of belonging with each other just because you belong to the same culture, if that makes any sense. That when you see another Bored Ape on the internet or you see them across like a random platform where you don't expect them to see, you're like instantly, oh, they're part of us. Like, they're part of like one big family.
Yeah. Let's talk about an anecdote that you told me off camera. There was someone who reached out on you on Twitter and asked if they could make these pins for you of your Bored Ape that you own. So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So there's this whole culture of in the Bored Ape Yacht Club and a lot of other projects where, because this becomes our digital identity, this is what we are using it as our profile picture on Twitter. That's how people recognize us. That it's almost like when you go to these events, people love to give out stickers and like pins and things like that. Like at every event you go, I was at ApeFest in Hong Kong last week and I collected about 72 of these.
Oh my gosh,
from different
stickers. What are you doing with these stickers?
Just collecting them. Like people like to put them on like laptops or whatever. I just like to keep them in a box. And it's just some sort of like being like, so whenever I give this pin to anyone, I always say that because Bored Ape played a big role in me getting full-time into Web3, and it changed my life not only from a financial point of view but also my interest and my career, that it's almost like when I'm giving you a sticker or a pin, I'm giving you a token of what my life is. And I think there's some beauty in it. Maybe there's some like deep value in it, but I feel like I want the people around me that I respect and value, that I want them to have a piece of my success, if that means anything.
No, I like that. I like that a lot. Now let's go back to ApeFest that you mentioned. It was recently recently took place in Hong Kong. And that was like an annual gathering of ape holders, right?
Yes.
So all Yuga Labs collections. Can you tell me about your experience there? You mentioned the word tribe. Was it the tribe of apes that had settled in Hong Kong?
No, it's been like such an ineffable experience for me to tell people about that whole week meant, like, because I always say this, like, the NFT space as a whole, and especially Bored Ape as a project, with its also ethos of why it's called Bored Apes, that I believe that a lot of us who are in this industry are misfits of society in some way. So it was almost like an event where a bunch of like these people coming together, and you would recognize them on the street, at the airport, at the hotel reception, of just wearing the Bored Ape merch, so you would recognize that they belong to this community. And it would be an instant icebreaker. It's almost like how often you always hear that people struggle to speak to strangers in real life. It's hard making friends when you're an older person, right? It's hard for anyone to just go up to some random person and be like, hey, what's going on? What's your story?
Not in Web3 though.
Not in Web3, and that's because there is this sense of like that it's hard for us to talk about our ridiculous world outside our space.
So you admit it's a ridiculous world.
100%. It's these JPEGs that are worth like thousands of dollars, and like, you know, we are making it like such a big aspect of our life that we are using it as our identity. Like, what happened to our photographs? So I feel like these events like really hone in that culture and makes you realize that you're part of something bigger. I remember when I bought my Bored Ape, the only reason I bought it is because I saw like a weird community thing happening on the internet where people from different parts of the world, because when Bored Apes came out, there was no financial motive for people to get into it. No one thought the NFT space would blow up. So a lot of people who got into it, including myself, we just got it because we were seeing a bunch of people on Twitter just change their profile picture. And I feel like I've always been part of communities in some way. I used to play music at some point, and I used to play rock and heavy metal music, and they have a culture of like long hair, black t-shirts, tattoos. So I feel like I saw like a weird community thing being developed in like such a short amount of time, and to see all of that come to life at events like ApeFest, where people are getting their clothes made like their Bored Apes, or getting it printed, or getting tattoos of it. And I think like it just shows like how people are like so much more emotionally connected to these characters. It's almost having like a nostalgia in just a 2 years of period because of the fluctuations and the hardships we've gone through the NFT and crypto market as a general. So it almost feels like we stuck together and we are in this together. And I think these events kind of like really highlight.
I love that. I love that. All right. So talking about the market, how do you see it right now? I think there is a renewed sense of passion for NFTs maybe, or maybe it just never went away, and the activity was always there. It was just maybe a little less than it is now. But where do you think it's going to go maybe in the next quarters?
I think there's like a lot of the crypto world had started looking at NFTs as a more valuable element to it. And I've been having a lot of conversation with a lot of crypto companies, and it's because they've understood what we were talking about earlier. It's the collecting culture aspect of things. That when we've been talking about like tokenizing real estate and like watches and Ferraris and things like that for a very long period of time. But it's too analytical, and it's too like just purely financial, whereas all these things have a vanity element to it. Ferrari has a vanity element to it. Rolex has a vanity element to it. So I think as time is going by, people are realizing that, okay, we want to do this on crypto, but I think it needs to be done in a way where people can show it. But it's not from a point of just like a show off or a vanity thing, but there is a lot of value in it. For example, let's say if I know that you own a bunch of like watch NFTs of like some valuable watches, and you own fractional ownership in those watches. That if I'm launching tomorrow a new watch company, or I have a launch, I can actually go to a bunch of public addresses and be like, you know what, because Ornella is interested in watches, I want her to be invited to my event. So it's almost like we went from, in the Web2 world, everyone was complaining about like, we don't want to share our data. In Web3, we went, you know what, everyone's data is transparent. Everyone's interests are transparent, and we are actually okay with having a lot of the public information out there. And I think that is something that's gonna be a huge thing because everyone's talking about it. And just going back to earlier what we were talking about, the gaming industry is going to be booming a lot in the next year, because in esports is a very big thing.
Yes.
So the gaming industry,
it's always been big.
It's always been big, and I think a lot of people don't realize that the gaming industry is bigger than cinema and music industry combined.
Oh, wow.
They're bigger than both of those industries combined. And I think as time is going by, people are realizing how esports is such a big thing. They're going to have the biggest esports tournament in Saudi next year, I believe. And I feel like the only two ways you can make money in the gaming world before, 3 ways actually, I would say, is one was esports. The other was if you were a streamer online, which is not everyone's cup of tea. Not everyone is comfortable or extroverted enough. Or the third thing would be like if you sold your account to someone, which is not something that people wanted to do. But now we are valuing game as almost like a skill, that if you spend like 4 hours a day for the last like 2 years and you've gotten like a particular skin or a particular gun, shouldn't that be valued at something so much more than just time? And what if I'm able to sell that? And what if I'm able to exchange that for money or see it as an asset? And I think the gaming industry and the real world asset industry are two things that I think are going to be hot for the next cycle.
All right. And last question, what advice would you give to someone who wants to invest in NFTs? Like, is there maybe a particular collection that you would recommend to look into? Or is there a strategy that you have that you'd like to share?
Well, I would say when it comes to collecting culture as a whole, there's an element of you, of course, knowing what's working and what's trending in the world. That goes with even fashion, right? Like suddenly you have like, let's say retro fashion become a thing. So everyone's getting into retro fashion. So I would say keeping tabs on what the culture of today is, but at the same time realizing that this is a very new industry. That means there are so many potential projects and companies and brands that will be launching that 99% of them will not be successful.
Okay, 99% will fail.
Will fail. And this is something Gary Vee talks about all the time. This is something, if you come from the startup world, you know that 95% startups fail as well. So I think it's very important for you to realize that because whenever anything booms, whether it was e-commerce a couple of years ago or whether it's NFT projects or ICOs in 2017, that you always see like a spike in like a lot of things that are happening in the world. But it's important to do a lot of research when something is new. One of the biggest challenges we have in this space right now is because it's a new industry, we have no blueprint to follow. No matter how much you say, any person going that this works and this doesn't work, doesn't make sense because the rules keep changing every couple of years.
It's a lot of trial and error.
Exactly. Right? It's like, imagine like using the internet when internet became a thing. It was still developing. So I would just say like, make sure you do timely research on what's happening with those projects and with the markets, because we always talk about that like the NFT space moves at so much at a faster space that we feel like it's been like 15 years all of us have been into NFTs, but it's just been like 2.5 years. So I would say keep an eye on definitely the gaming industry, which is something that everyone's looking at, but make sure you do a lot of your research. Take this time because the market's heating up and it's going to get crazier the next year.
Okay,
this is a very good time. This is a very good time to firstly educate yourself, understand how tokenomics work, what different chains are, how these NFTs are different on different chains, what are the advantages and disadvantages, and then make a thesis around it. Okay, how do you expect the public to work around that? Like, do you think that if a particular blockchain is cheaper to use, do you think a lot of the general public will be more interested in coming on that, or something that's a lot more technical? There is this data we don't really have. We have some data, but it's still new. We are forming the rules as we go. So I would say make sure you do a lot of research, but definitely keep an eye on what's hot in the market.
Okay, amazing. Good advice. Well, you heard it here, folks. Now is the time to go educate yourself. So make sure to follow Rahim on X to learn more. And thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Rahim.
Thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure. I'm grateful to be here.
And everyone, please make sure to check out other episodes of the Web3 Talks series. Until next time.